are live. There we go. I'm pretty sure we're live.
Oh, there it is. So my thing just showed up. So media is now streaming live.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Jake, for being on Temporary Book Club. You have done how many of these so far? 2?
This is just my second one.
Second one.
I believe I was on the inaugural voyage.
You were. You did the first one. I thought you might have done a second one.
No,
that first one, I think we finished like 7 bottles of wine.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
That particular part of it.
I just remember the table being full. Anyways, you're going to have to excuse my cough. My cough is driving me crazy right now. So thanks for being here again. Thanks for doing it again.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. Will you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Who are you?
My name is Jake Richards. I am a father, a husband, a recovering English teacher. Now I devote most of my free time to high school athletics.
There you go. You're an athletic director, which is pretty
yes.
cool. Jake and I know each other. We used to teach together a couple times, a couple different schools, and then we've remained friends ever since. Jake's also one, actually, when I started to get more into literature, Jake was one of the guys that kind of got me on the way and gave me recommendations. In the book we're going to talk about tonight, The Riders was one of the books Jake actually recommended to me, and this was probably around 2008. So when we started talking and said, hey, I'm like, what book do you want to do? We were kind of going back and forth, and you're more into, I think you read a lot of crime, mystery. Is that what it would be?
It's my guilty pleasure. Yeah, crime fiction.
And so he's got a little bit different genre than I usually read. So it took a second to figure out what book we were going to kind of talk about. And then we came back to this one. We thought it would be fitting. So we both reread it. But before we get into that, speaking of Corona, my cough, what have you been doing? How you been handling this?
We've been great, man. More fortunate than a lot of folks out there, for sure. Real lucky in the sense that, we've got a place here. We've got some land out here in Ross, and we've been outside a lot during this time. Really spending a lot of time together as a family, more time than I usually. Self-admittedly, I'm a wayward, absentee father and husband a lot of the time, and so this has given me a chance to be around, and so we've enjoyed it. But I say that knowing that there are a lot of people out there who are miserable, and that's rough.
Right. Yeah. So you guys you're getting some projects done, it looks like.
Oh yeah.
You've been hanging out with the kids. Any guilty pleasures? Anything you watch on Netflix that?
Actually, we've watched less TV like during this time than we did before.
Interestingly enough, we do too, but it's not because we don't want to. It's just we've watched everything already, pretty much.
Right. So how about you? What have you guys been doing?
Well, our recent guilty pleasure is my 600-pound life. You've ever dug into those?
No, I've heard of it.
So we've watched a couple of those, and 90 Day Fiance. I've been a big fan of that for a while. And I
don't even know where to go with this. I mean, the titles alone.
Yeah, that's why they're called guilty pleasures. I should probably keep them to myself. So, awesome. Now let's talk about this book. I'm going to set my Alexa alarm. Alexa, set the timer for 45 minutes. Maybe she listened. We'll see. And what I'm going to do is we're doing fiction, which we got lucky with because last 2 episodes, if you've seen or not, were heavy.
Yeah, right.
They were awesome, but they were trying to get a lot of information to people, really just saying, hey, look at this. You can read this book, and there's a lot out there. This one's a little bit more laid back, a little bit more fun, and I'm going to just read. So we don't try to dig in with the plot about it. I'm just going to read what they have on the book cover. Fred Scully is in another country, a desert Irishman far from home. After 2 long years of traveling through Europe, he decided to move his family from Australia to Western Ireland. Scully arrived weeks ahead of his family to renovate the old farmhouse they bought in the shadow of a castle in County Offaly. Now, at the gate of Shannon's International Airport, he anxiously awaits the arrival of his pregnant wife and his 7-year-old daughter, envisioning a new life ahead, a fresh start. He has waited for and worried about this for months. He is a man who does not like being alone. The plane lands, the glass doors to the terminal slide open, and his daughter emerges, alone. There is no note, no word of explanation from his wife, only the mute silence of his stunned child. In an instant, Scully's life goes down in flames. And I should not be smiling, but I think I think you know why I'm smiling, because this
Well,
book is nuts.
I'd like to know who wrote that jacket summary. I
Why is
take
that?
issue with several parts of that, to be honest with you.
Well, let's dig in there.
Well,
Where?
okay, so first of all, the sentence about he moves his family to that's
True.
exponentially more active than
Then he
that
had
decision actually was.
right. Exactly. I
I
agree.
mean, he was a passive it was, well, a writer, for lack of a better. I mean,
doing as he was told. Really, he did
Yeah.
it because he did it for the love of his wife.
correct.
She wanted it, and he would do essentially anything she asked. So why don't you tell me give me the plot in your words?
That's probably why the person who wrote that book jacket wrote it like that, because it's so damn hard
It is.
to sum up. I would say that it's a journey inward rather than, it hasn't really, I don't think, anything to do with the countries he's in, the adventure he goes on to try to find his missing wife. I think it's more a journey inward, into, like that said, a guy who can't be alone, there's a center of his obsession that he's just desperately longing for. And it's every single page. I mean, like we talked about outside of this, I mean, we read it twice, and the second time, like I did not put the book down for 7 hours one day, because I couldn't.
Let's jump into that real quick. Why do you think it was? Because it was the same for me too. I mean, honestly, when I went to reread the book, I mean, I remembered it vaguely, but the second time, the emotion was crazy over the top compared to the first. I know I didn't have it.
Right.
Why? Why not? What do you think?
I don't know.
I have an answer, I think, but you don't have a reason, you don't think?
I mean, I think that because I remembered it loosely, just like you said. Like I remember the wife not being in the picture and him looking for her, but for some reason I'd created this, like she was just lost or something. Like I initially thought I remembered that she had died, but the fact that we never, like I kept turning the page, like maybe this is where we find out what happened to her. Maybe this is where we find out, and you don't.
I think the changes for both of us is I read this in 2008. Anna, I remember actually when I was reading this book, which is really weird. A lot of books I read, I can remember just a little thing in my head where I was when I was reading it. I can do this for a lot of books for some reason. And I remember reading this book, pushing my now 11-year-old daughter around the neighborhood in her stroller. She was a newborn baby, and reading the book as I walked on the stroller. But I think that has everything to do with why our emotions different, because married, in a relationship, both strong relationships, and you have kids. And I think that emotion that we lacked even though I had a daughter that was newly born, not the same, years in. And I think that emotion comes, I mean, it was, I don't know, the emotions that I went through in this book, crazy, of anger, frustration,
yes,
disappointment, infuriation. I mean, my goodness. And with him, with her. So let's just go, so people that are listening know what we're talking about. We have a guy named Scully, born in Australia. What you know about him is he has a wife and a daughter that's, I think, 6 or 7.
Something like that.
Her name's Billy, and essentially what you know is they have a house in Perth. They spent some time in Europe. They have a house in Australia, and his wife says, I want to move to Ireland. They were there for a short trip, and they decide they want to build a cottage there. This old rundown thing that if you've ever been to Ireland, they have these everywhere. They're just shells that no running water, no electricity. They're a mess. But romantically, she wants to do this. And what you learn about Scully is just how big his heart is. He's got a big heart. He loves his family. And so he does it. He moves there ahead of time, works his butt off to get this place ready. And then the next thing you know, like I read from the sleeve, his daughter gets off the plane alone. His wife's not there. And then what we learn about his wife, do you remember the characteristics, what they start to tell her about him? What is her character? How did they describe her?
That she's constantly trying to find this inner artist that may. Oh, you won. Good job, honey. Way to go. She's constantly searching for this inner artist that, there are people around her, especially in Paris, I think it was, that kind of enable it, but that inner artist may not. I mean, I don't know. It's
no, right. You're exactly right.
She's
her
constantly
name,
searching for a picture of herself that may not exist.
This romantic view, right? Like I think that people get after like college or something where they just want to be free. And I think they talked about like she blames her parents. He said she's very orderly and by the book. And I think she's been that way her whole life from her parents. And now she wants to be different, even though she's got a child, one on the way, and a husband. And so she wants to be this free spirit. And then you got Scully. And Scully's different. You want to take that? Who's Scully?
Scully's that's actually a part of the book that you'd mentioned an excerpt. And am I allowed to? Can I read?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, please.
This is early on in the book, and very early on, all we see is Scully. We see Scully fixing up this dilapidated cottage in Ireland. Just a man alone with his thoughts, with his hands and the projects he's working on. So this is the beginning of chapter 2. Scully woke sore and freezing, with the fire long dead and his clothes damp upon him. At the well he washed bravely, and afterwards he scavenged in his turp-soaked rubbish heap and found a shard of mirror to shave by. He wiped the glass clean and set it on the granite wall. There he was again, Frederick Michael Scully, the same square dial and strong teeth, the broad nose with its pulpy scar down the left side from a fight on a lobster boat, the same stupid blue that caused his wonky eye. The eye worked well enough unless he was tired, but it wandered a little, giving him a mad look that sometimes unnerved strangers who saw the Brillo-pad hair and the severely used face beneath it as ominous signs. Long ago, he'd confronted the fact that he looked like an axe murderer, a sniffer of bicycle seats.
I love that line.
And so that's, he goes on. And this is literally him. This is him looking in a shard of mirror from this rubbish heap from the previous tenant of this cottage. And
I'm a big oaf. He's a big, ugly oaf. And judged before people meet him. Misunderstood. And his daughter actually, and I like Tim Winton. I think he does awesome, and we're going to talk about Raglan Road in a minute. But I think he's a really cool job of bringing things in. But the whole Quasimodo thing and the Hunchback of Notre Dame, awesome, but way too much.
Right.
The whole scene where I get it, Notre Dame, and he's there. I think that's so cool. You didn't even have to. He could have not mentioned that it was his daughter's favorite comic, and she brought it everywhere. And Quasimodo, how cool! Because I think a lot of people could have got that by themselves, and it would have made such an interesting thing. But since he puts it in your face, essentially he shows you his daughter's favorite book is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This ugly guy that lives up in this church bells, that is misunderstood because of his looks, right? Yeah. And that keeps coming back. So that's Scully, but he's got a big heart. And she keeps saying, I love this story because he's this ugly man with a big heart. And that's my dad. And then we got the final character who's Billy, and Billy's is 6 or 7 years old. Reminds me a lot of my daughter, just because she is. I think when I read this too, I remember thinking, man, this girl, they should have wrote her as like a 13-year-old because she is about like that. But once I had my daughter, I realized there are some kids that are that young that kind of have that outlook, and she really does. She's more she's very mature for her age. Um, and I find her interesting and frustrating. And let's come back to this. So off the plane, Scully goes and gets his daughter Billy. She's by herself, but she won't say a word.
Silent.
Silent. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that you've got a kid, that age who's uniquely intelligent. Like she's highly intelligent as a kid, right? And she understands. Right. I think she's got a high emotional intelligence. She's got a high, obviously, cerebral intelligence. But I think she senses what's going on, and once she walks off that plane, she sees, that I don't know, she sees the crushing weight that this whole thing becomes on Scully. It's the dad she looks up to, the dad I think she feels sorry for, this guy that she feels protective of, and instead of delivering the line, "Hey, mom doesn't want to be with you anymore," she stayed behind to find herself. I think she understands that that's not enough to explain the situation.
Yeah, but man, was it frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because she not only doesn't say anything, but then Scully, in a matter of hours, I mean, they are on a whirlwind trip throughout Europe, right? They go to where they all spent time as a family, traveling for a while. He wants to retrace his steps, the people they met, and he drags his daughter along. And so this is where the emotion, I think, comes in.
Yeah, he's doing that in an entirely different mindset as well. He's doing it in this frantic, panicked, I'm going to just get ripped and treat everybody that we've ever met like I really wanted to treat him the first time around, because I don't have time to mess around. Like the guy on the Greek island, Alex or whatever his name is.
Yeah, you're right, Alex.
I mean, he treats him, I think, like he really wanted to treat him the first time around. It's nice to do it. Well, now he doesn't have time for that because it's, he's looking for his wife.
Right, he's being real. It was funny. One of the things, the way they explained Scully, and everybody watched Jennifer together and the family, they just said, I mean, they straight up came out and said, "You never deserved her. You're a joke, right? You know that you're ugly and you're just ignorant, and this was bound to happen pretty much, And
like, surprised it took this long, man."
Right. So did your feeling about, I mean, the first time I heard that, I was struck. I felt like I knew Scully, from the time, the part of the book and putting his place together, and I respected him. But did your thoughts towards Scully change? Not about what we know he does later, but just from people's descriptions of him?
Can you repeat that last little bit? I'm sorry, a four-wheeler just came up the road.
No. The people's description of Scully, every time he'd meet somebody, they scoffed at him.
Right.
At first, it hit me hard. Like, man, this nice guy getting
Poor
scoffed
guy.
at.
Yeah.
But the third or fourth time you heard that from somebody, did you feel the same way? I don't know if I did.
Yeah, I think I got to the point where, especially the people who knew him with Jennifer, who knew them as a couple, the way they portrayed him, when he went back and visited them, the way they said, what you said, like, look, this was going to happen one way or the other. You weren't good enough for her. At some point, I started to think, like, man, Scully, why'd you take it that long?
Right.
Like, you had to know.
I look at it as like, at first I felt really sorry for him, but then it's like there's a point where so much ignorance in putting it out is just, it's your fault. It's like the person that goes and tries out for American Idol that is just horrible, and they're going to laugh at you. You feel sorry for him for a second, and then you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Damn well you're horrible. Right? You really think you're that good? I mean, you live in a closet, no social, understanding of how people look at you and think that you're a good singer. And that's kind of how I got with Scully. After everybody is telling him, dude, she was too, come on. I kind of started to resent Scully and just say, have you not had any respect for yourself? you know, if everybody can feel this way about you. But then, you know, as he shows who he is, my feelings changed towards Scully, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a dude who was willing to move anywhere. You could have named any place on earth and he would have moved there for his wife and his daughter. Guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see somebody who's that sacrificial, you know, part of me is like, come on, that's, I don't know. You know, enough's enough. There's, you know, there've got to be parameters.
Right.
And yet that's who he is. He loves her that much. He loves his family that much that he's willing
but
to
he loves her that much, but to the detriment of family later.
Right. Right.
And how do you feel about that? What, I mean, that was where I was infuriated. To be honest. You have kids. I have kids.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I think back to what you said at the beginning, you know, how the emotions the second time reading it have changed, you know, a decade later or whatever. You know, I've got now an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a whatever she is, 3 maybe. And, you know, it, like, at some point, the mom just abandons the family. Like, that just defies all sense of reality in my mind.
But then Scully abandons the family. He abandons her. I mean, at one point, Billy, you know, to bring in my 600-pound life, what I just learned last night, you know, the frustrating part of some parents, you know, they get to this point and God bless them, you know, they're going through hell, I understand, and they're trying to change. But a lot of these kids get put into situations that they shouldn't have to be in. Like there was a guy last night who had to raise his brother because his mom couldn't move. This other episode Kim and I were watching, and the kids had to go grocery shopping for the family. Anyways, he does this to his daughter. He takes her around Europe with no regard for her. Her physical well-being gets hurt. She gets hurt. She almost dies, you could argue.
Well, after she gets bit by a dog, it's infected, and he ignores the signs of it.
And she's getting a fever, and he's just like, "Oh, you'll be all right." And then, but I mean, this poor Billy has been left by her mom and her dad. I mean, one of the most craziest parts of the book is when she said, "You know, you're good enough for me. When am I going to be good enough for you? You know, you're looking for my mom and your wife, and I'm being left behind." And he physically leaves her behind a couple times
in Amsterdam, right?
Yeah, I mean, just right. And then he gets beat with a dildo. Poor guy, right?
Right, and that's the thing. What you just said right there, it's the nail on the head. You're feeling sorry for this person, you're feeling sympathetic toward this person, and then it's right back to, oh my God, poor guy. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know, and it's the toughest part is to feel anything toward the third character, the mom.
Right. Oh yeah. She's the devil. You know, yeah, at first the hatred's all there, and then you start to really, it turns towards Scully. It's Scully, you know, like, wow, you know, she left. I get it. That's horrible. Pregnant, but what you're doing to your daughter who's right here is ridiculous. Have you ever read Frankenstein?
Yeah.
You know, I got Frankenstein's one of my favorite books. I got to do a TBC on that. But do you see any correlation here? And I don't know if he meant any, but here's where I see it. Frankenstein was a monster. Everywhere he went, he was prejudged at being a monster. But he was a good guy. I mean, really, if you've read, those of you that have not read Frankenstein, it is not the movies. It is a book that most people, I don't know why popular culture gets everything wrong, pretty much. But Frankenstein's a guy that's created, really just wants to be liked, wants friends, wants a girlfriend, pure at heart, big heart, and gets society just comes back at him so hard. Doesn't give him a chance. If he walks somewhere, he's prejudged because he's ugly, kind of like Scully. And then Frankenstein's monster becomes a monster. He's not a monster until he starts saying, all right, this is how society's going to treat me, then I'm going to treat him that way back.
Well, you've got the original act of abandonment in Frankenstein is what said, and it's the constant, the monster, his creation is constantly searching
for love, understanding,
and love, and anything, and it's not there. It's
And he
not there.
says, please just make me a wife. All I
Right.
want is somebody that can understand me. And it's not until society and Dr. Frankenstein push him back that he shows that he's a monster. Like Scully. Scully
Right.
becomes a monster.
Yeah.
He does. Which is crazy. I
But
don't want to go ahead.
Well, here's and I thought about this today, and you know, thinking about this book as a whole again. You know, I'm so quick to judge and condemn Jennifer, the mom, the wife. I'm so quick to do that, and yet whose voice do we never hear? Never, and that's where I think Tim Winton's. I would call it. I would call it a brilliance of some sort, because it's definitely intentional that he doesn't give her a voice. Like, we get no real flashbacks, we get nothing.
And everybody's on her side.
Yeah.
Really, if you think about it. I mean, I didn't think about it till you just said that. But everybody, now that I think about it, is on her side. Like, duh, dude, you were never going to stay with her.
But that's even ambiguous, because the people who are on her side are people that
shallow,
see right through. Like,
shallow.
I wouldn't want to hang out with these people.
And none of them said, well, yeah, I can't believe she left you and your daughter, and she's supposedly pregnant.
Right.
That's crazy. A couple other things I just want to get into. Irma. What do you got about Irma? Anything? What do you think she represents? Irma, do you remember?
No.
The girl that comes into play. Billy, they meet Billy and them on the trip, and Billy even says, I think I like Irma because she's a lot like my dad. She's got a big heart, but she just kind of doesn't get things. She was the girl that wanted to be with Billy. You don't remember her? Stole their money at first, and then Billy stole from her.
No, I don't remember that at all.
Let me see. I think her name's Irma, right? The lady that you remember?
Yeah, duh.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and Scully and Irma hook up.
Right.
Is her name Irma?
God, that's what I'm saying. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. What do you think her name is?
I don't know.
Irma. Yeah, I have Irma written here.
Yeah. So she keeps popping up, as the search goes on.
What do you think they're trying to show her with her? I can't, because honestly, I don't get it. I don't know what point she brings to the story, because if anything, it just confuses me more.
Yeah, I don't, and the fact that she seems to be following them,
right?
And I don't. It seems almost like she's got, and I can't remember the history. Like, she ran off with some younger man, and then he
got dissed,
used her, right? And then just ducked out.
She's still traveling around, right?
Yeah, and then she's ultimately what allows Scully and Billy to get back to Ireland, right? She's the one they steal from her
because she canceled his credit card for some crazy reason, right?
Yeah, she walked into the American Express and canceled it. That's right.
Right. Yeah. So I just didn't know what you thought about her. What you thought? I just don't get what her character brings, except
a convenient plot twist, I guess. I don't know.
Confusion, but then Billy likes her.
Right.
And Billy has to make makes a comparison to her and her dad. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. I don't want to get into the ending.
Wait a second. No, go back to Irma.
Yeah, go.
Obviously, she is an embodiment of loneliness. Another one that, Scully's a lonely dude, and even though he's got Billy right next to him the entire time that he's on this frantic search, he's constantly looking for this one thing that's going to make him feel whole, and he thinks that it's the same thing with Irma. Really, she's wandering around rudderless, looking for some love, and I think she's more of a, and I don't, maybe this is overselling it in terms of what Tim Winton meant by it, but I think she's just looking for something to hang on to, and once she finds this pair that she kind of, I like them, they're great, they're obviously looking for something too,
right?
Then she feels like that's the answer.
Yeah, and you're right,
because it's a parallel search.
I think you find it kind of see yourself as you're reading the book, like, okay, I could see something working out here.
Right.
Maybe after all this turmoil, and he comes to
Scully straight uses her and just
right, and then so far nothing comes out of it.
right.
The other character I wanted to just bring in was Khan, the postman's brother. Remember Khan?
Yeah.
He was the electrician that didn't
Right.
show up for work, and I just thought it was interesting that the postman, was his name Peter?
Peter, yeah.
Peter.
However you pronounce
it. And Peter says, I think I like you, Scully, so much because you remind me of my brother, and that was a little bit of foreshadowing. And I thought that was interesting. Did you sit that? Did you realize that when it was happening, or?
I don't know that I made that connection, to be honest with you.
What he said was, you're a lot like my brother. My brother had a big heart and a family, and then he threw it all away. And essentially, that's what Khan is. Khan is a guy that drank every night to stupor, and he it wouldn't work. And I think it was interesting to say that, hey, if you don't turn things around, even though you could not, when he said, you're like Khan, he's like, you said you're like Khan used to be, because Scully wasn't anywhere near that at that point in time. But it was a little bit I thought it was a kind of a cool foreshadowing to say, hey, careful, I watched my brother, I still love him to death, go through this.
Right. And then his brother becomes an irresponsible deadbeat, really. And that's what
Scully is.
That's what Scully becomes in those moments where he gets as a daughter.
All right, last final thing, real big thing I want to talk about is the writers, the name of the book, The Dream. What I mean, you got to help me here.
Well, we need to go to the text here. I'm on page, let's see,
51.
I've got guessing. 79. I don't know if that's
the only thing I have from 51 before you go to 79, though, is this when they're talking about the field. Okay, just to give everybody a real quick happening is Scully wakes up in the middle of the night. The book is called The Riders, okay? And so you must think that, hey, it has something to do with it. But Scully works up almost to a nightmare. It's cold out, and he sees lights down. He has an actual Norman castle ruins on this land. The light, something's going on down there. He goes down there. He sees torches. He sees these figures on horses. And it's so real. He can smell everything. He can see the sweat. He can see hear the horses breathing. And on these horses are these knight-like men that are just staring off at the castle, right? And it's he tries to call out to them, get their attention, but these riders on these horses are kind of like, they're dirty, they're hot, they're stoic, and they're looking for something. They're waiting for something. So anyways, we'll see what Jake has to say. But here's what I found that I thought they were trying to make their point, and I don't know if I just missed it. It says, everything imaginable had been done. Oh, wait, here we go. Wait. Okay, talking about Ireland. It was a small, tooled, and cross-hatched country, simple, so amazingly simple from above. Every field had a name, every path a style. Everything imaginable had been done or tried out there. It wasn't the feeling you had looking out on his own land. In Australia, you looked out and saw the possible, the spaces, the maybes. Here, the wildness was pressed into something else, into what had already been. And out there, beneath the birds and the gibberish of strokes and lines and connections of the valley, was his new life. So it's what he was saying is, hey, Perth was like looking out and saying, oh, what is new? And in Ireland, where he's now moving, it's saying, hey, this has all been done before, but this is your new life. There's a lot of history here, and that's your new life.
Yeah.
But that was right after the Riders. Go ahead. What do you?
Well, no, I think the first time, and I scanned through before, I think the first time he sees he imagines these horseback warriors really is later than that. That's the thing, is it's on page 79 and 80.
Is it? Okay. So he's looking at the field first, and then that's when he sees riders. Okay. So that's where the history then comes in. Maybe that's what he was saying, is that's where he sees the history. All right, good.
So down there in the gently sloping field beneath the castle steps, the horsemen had assembled. There were about 20 of them in fancy dress. They were wild-haired, cloaked, and high-booted. With firelight in the dark balls of their eyes, the riders looked up at the keep, and Scully tried to think to find his way ahead of all of this. He shook with cold. Out in the valley, there were no more lights, no floods burning in the yards of local farms, no handy sign of life. He watched and waited, mesmerized. He saw weapons now, scars and blood, the restless twitching of reins. He saw the sheen of sweat along the horses' flanks and the united gaze of the horsemen. They looked a mercenary lot, fierce and stoic. In all his life, he'd never seen men like these. From where he crouched, he couldn't quite see the front of the castle keep, whether or not a light showed, if a door was ajar, or if someone was up there. And so it's the specter of the past that is bringing this castle that's just, once again, it's a ruin. It's a ruin, and it's deserted. It's been deserted for years, and they're bringing it to life. And all the men, all the warriors, all the people on, these ghosts are looking toward one focal point. It's like they're expecting something to happen. And I feel like, I think the metaphor is obviously, for Scully, he's looking through his entire life with Jennifer. And he's the entire story is about him revisiting these places,
these ruins.
Yes, exactly.
So I get it now. So these soldiers are there fighting or waiting on something that's not going to happen, and that is a ruin now, right? And Scully,
they're already dead. They're already
dead.
They've already got the wounds. They've got the weapons with there's blood.
And yet they're so focused on it,
right?
Like Scully was for Jennifer,
right?
And at the end, I with these things, I'm trying to figure out whether to give away the ending. I don't think we're going to, but at the end, you're right. He
Mike, this is the second time we've read this book, and we were both on the edge.
Surprised. You're right, exactly. So, what do you think? Should we tell the ending?
Yeah,
but what is there to tell? Really, that's the great thing about it.
I mean, what they returned to Ireland, to the cottage that he's created. I don't know. I mean,
yeah. So let me just say this. Here, let me show you this. I don't know if this works right. Can you still see me?
Yeah.
I want to read somebody that wrote on Goodreads. Chris rated it 1 star. I hated this book so much that I threw it across the room immediately after reading the last sentence, and then picked it up and shoved it deep into the garbage, covered in filth. Fred is such an awful, unlikable loser. I hated him the entire book and secretly wish someone would do him in at every turn. I found the story overly drawn out and the plot was awful. And then you have somebody, 5 stars. This was incandescently beautiful book. Yeah. The prose is absolutely lovely, and that is the primary strength of the novel. Every paragraph is a pleasure to read due to the writing. I think you agree with me. I don't know. The writing was awesome, beautiful, and the story was great. I mean, the ending, I don't know. What is your opinion of the ending?
Well, it's the. Am I wrong in saying I can't remember for sure, but there are only 2 instances where they see this mirage.
Yeah. Right? Yep. The beginning and at the end. Right?
Yeah. And the second one, I believe his daughter is with him. I think Billy's out there, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's something poetic about that. I mean, sure. Talk about, you've come full circle and you're out there and you're looking on the ruins of, you're never going to escape that. That's the thing, is that dream is going to continue to come back. That what would have been, what, is always going to be there.
But now he's focusing on the right thing.
Correct. Yeah. Because he knows, look, this is going to be here. We've got to deal with it. We've got to take it as it comes and just move through it. Not on from it, move through it.
But did he have another baby?
I don't know. I don't know.
Isn't that frustrating?
I mean, how are you supposed to know? I know. Maybe I'm confusing it because we did watch, or we are watching a Netflix series called The Stranger. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, yeah, I watched it. Yep.
Where the wife fakes a birth, or no, fakes being pregnant.
Oh, I'm thinking of something different.
Yeah, and so I think it's called The Stranger. I don't know, but I there's still part of me that believes that Jennifer was was making up the.
Oh yeah, me too.
I don't know though. I don't know.
You know, I don't know either. So overall, would you recommend the book to our
100%. I
100%?
yeah, the person who gave it 1 star and threw it deep in the trash with the other filth, that's nonsense. I mean,
It's
that's
nonsense. I agree. And you know what? I'm so glad because I read it the first time and I liked it. I did. Something about being a parent and being older, you're able to just have a different perspective, and I loved it. I could say
yeah.
that I now love this book, and it does. You know, the ending's one thing, and we're not giving it. I mean, we're not. While not
There's
telling you the
nothing to give
exact
away.
ending, you're exactly. There's
There's
nothing
nothing
to
to give
give
away.
away. Um,
Well, and here's the thing. What other story have you read where there are so few characters and yet it makes such an impression on you? You have all these connections with in different capacities, really, as a father, as a husband, as a
right.
person, as a son, as a brother, I mean, you have so many connections emotionally to the story, and yet nothing happens, does it?
No.
There's not some larger plot that really drives it forward. It is a journey within one person.
And looking at that person and how you view that person and how that person handles different situations, and really the most amazing thing I think that Tim Winton does is Scully doesn't do what you expect him to do maybe in some situations, yet he is true to character, which is
Right.
really hard to do.
Right.
Really hard to write that. You know, it's really hard to say, oh, he wouldn't do to say, I can't believe he did that, because you could say, oh, he couldn't do that, and the author just took,
Right.
privilege and did. No, you could say, yeah, I can see where he did that. You know, even at the point, and I just want to get into this, where he apologized to her. He gets out of jail from after getting beat by the dildo, and what he did that next day blew my mind when he was on that boat in Belgium, and he laid there all day after apologizing to Billy, after saying this can't happen again. I think he's coming back to his senses, and literally he rolls up in a ball for a day.
Right.
Man, the frustration. And I love that. I mean, that's what was just like, holy crap.
Right.
So anything else to add, Jake, about this book?
No, I can't strongly recommend it enough. It's a good quality read.
Awesome. Thank you. So just to give people a heads up, next book's The Road. I've read this a bunch of times, but
Man.
you remember Moose? You remember Moose did a show? Yep. Moose and I are going to do this in a couple of weeks. He picked this one, and it's a good one to reread. And then I've never read this book. Have you ever read this, Jake?
No, I have not.
Savage Inequalities. I have not either. It's Savage Inequalities, Children in America's Schools. So I think that'd be I've never read it. A buddy of mine named Scott said he wanted to talk about this book. So we're going to talk about that one in the coming weeks. I want to thank Beth Brackman again for my logo, and the Harm Brothers, who you went with, right? You like the Harm Brothers?
What a great show.
You took, yeah. They're coming out with an album June 5th. And so we're just trying to help out all these artists try to, maintain their business as much as we can. So they have an album coming out June 5th. Make sure you check that out, or check out any of their other music right now. I'm a big fan. Jake's a big fan. So thanks, buddy. Miss you. We'll get poker soon.
Miss you.
All right. Thanks for doing it.
All right. Love you, man.
Love you too. Take care, bro.
See ya.
See ya.